Welcome to Mindset Mavericks. So I'm the host, Jon Coogan, and today we're joined by a guest, Jeremy Bishop. So Jeremy, he's very much all about building a personal brand that stands out and attracts dedicated following, which is an art and a science. So Jeremy's worked with over 200 people, from Netflix stars, high-profile authors, turning their brands into powerhouse assets to generating millions along the way. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to talk through some of the proven methods for creating and growing, and most importantly, monetizing a personal brand. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate it. And looking forward to getting into this convo. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So what I'd love to do anyway is find out a little bit about the guests and just find out what brought you to where you are today. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? So what inspired you to focus on personal branding?
Absolutely. So I was about 18 years old. I had left high school a year early, and I had pursued music full time. So my passion was music as a drummer, and I spent about a year on the road in the heavy metal world.
Yeah.
And then I got introduced to entrepreneurship at 19. My first journey in entrepreneurship was actually network marketing, if you're familiar. And so I had a bit of success. I built this really big affiliate network of about 5,000 people, and it was a blast. And that was kind of where I made my first little chunk of change and had this, tiny little bit of success at a pretty early age. And one day I get a phone call, and that company had a problem internally, and they shut down overnight. Okay. And so I was there, with just a few things. I looked and I was like, man, if I could have done one thing more on this journey, I would have focused on building my name just as much as any company or product or industry that I represent. Okay. And so in my early 20s, it led me on this mission to build a personal brand. I think it was a little bit before we knew that term that's so common now, personal branding. And so, I had no idea where that was going to lead me. I ended up kind of focusing on the personal branding space, building your social media, and figuring out ways to kind of deploy your personal brand through a business, and how is it going to actually come together with things like, building relationships and, growing your business and growing your network. And so, yeah, that was kind of the early big indicator, was like, man, I need to build my personal brand so that no matter what happens, I have this reputation and this name that I can kind of grow through my opportunities over time.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because you mentioned about having a bit of a life on the road, musician, and that's one particular personal brand that you've got there. So how did that translate, or how did you use that in the beginning, if at all?
I really didn't actually. It's kind of nuts to think about, 18 years of my life completely dedicated to music and dedicated to drumming. And when I made this shift, because it was about a year and a half, 2 years of touring as a drummer, and I just said, I don't think this is the dream goal that I really want for myself. I don't think this is really the lifestyle. I looked around me and at my peers, and they were in their 30s and still struggling to buy Taco Bell for dinner. So a few things went off in my head, and I was like, I really love this freedom. Okay. And I love pursuing a big goal. And of course, as a musician, I mean, dedicating 5, 10, 15 years, to one thing. So if there's one thing that I took from the music into entrepreneurship, it was knowing that if I do something, I do it for 5, 10 plus years in order to get what I want, right? In order to become good at it, in order to win. And so that was what I took from music. Other than that, I took a lot of the things that I didn't want my future or lifestyle to necessarily be. But hey, shout out to all of my musician friends that are 10, 15, 20 years later, finally starting to see that real success in the industry, because it's not easy.
Yeah. And I know we spoke a little bit before the recording started, but one of the things I've certainly avoided for 20 years is actually building that personal brand. So for someone like me who's just looking to start building that personal brand and putting yourself out there, what do you think is one of the first steps to take to building a personal brand?
I think the first step to building a personal brand is understanding, accepting that what you share is a part of your journey. It's not about waiting until you have some level of success or you have accomplished some special accolade. That is not when you should start building a personal brand. People really like to see and be able to follow you in a journey from where you are today to who you want to become and who you become in 5, 10 years. And so if you look back at any really big, let's say, influence in the entrepreneurial world, you'll be able to go back 5, 10, 15 years and see when a Gary Vaynerchuk was making terrible videos, tasting wine and spitting it into a bucket. And he was doing that for years and no one knew that he was going to, that he would become the Gary Vaynerchuk that people know now. And right. And so, but he leaves that content there. He doesn't delete it. He didn't wait until it was perfect. So start. That's the first step. Get started. And the second key reminder is your brand is directly correlated with what you actually do in real life. And so there are a lot of questions that I get from people, maybe entrepreneurs, and they ask me, Jeremy, how do I get more comments? How do I get more likes? How do I get more followers? How do I make this, how do I turn this into money or revenue? And I'll ask you, well, what are you doing in your business? Because it's directly reflected. So if you're going to events, if you're showing up to calls, if you're actually communicating with people and networking, that's going to turn into more likes and more comments if people like you, right? And so it's not so much of this secret as it is a lot of time and hard work and kind of like a marathon over many, many years. And then, yes, of course, leveraging your social media in order to kind of open up new doors as well. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, no, perfect. I think it's exactly what you said. To get a mile down the road, you've got to take that first step. And it is just put that work in, put the effort in. But one of the things that I certainly have struggled with is how important it is to niche down your personal brand. For instance, I've mentioned to you, I've got a couple of different companies and involved in a few different areas. But how much of it is it important to share all those different facets, or should it really be focusing on one particular niche?
Well, my belief is if you want to win big, you focus on one thing and become very, very, very good at it. And so, as an example, I'm really great at playing the drums. I'm not the type of musician that can play a little bit of 5 instruments. Okay. I can play one really damn well. And this is my philosophy. Others can do as they please. I'm not telling you, I'll never tell anyone that there's one way to build and grow on social, because as we all well know, there are millions of ways to become successful in any area, whether it's social, whether it's your business or any industry. But I think that just like if you're trying to build a successful business, you've got to pick one thing to build to build a really great foundation, create results. I would say kind of create a proof of concept for yourself. And that's really going to help in all of these questions about what do I post and what is my brand and the big, like, who am I and why do people care? And I think that question comes back to, well, what are you doing that you look at yourself and you're proud of the foundation or the business or the project or the right or the the tech product you're creating or the charity organization that you have worked for or created, or maybe you are an incredible employee, okay, and you work at an extremely high level within an organization, which, by the way, I worked inside, 2 companies and created a lot of success and a great brand within a company. Okay.
Mm.
So it's not, again, I refer back to, we're not waiting until some level of special success in order to start doing these things. It's really deciding on, well, John, if you've got 3 or 4 businesses, which one are you really going to, have that be the life changer? And I bet that if you focus on that in the
Mm.
real world, it's going to reflect over in the concept of the brand, right? And on social media as well.
And I think it kind of ties into my next thought process, and that's around how much you actually create an avatar for your perfect audience. Just is it much of a sliding scale as to trying to be authentic to yourself and put out your values, or how much do you focus on who you're trying to reach?
These are a lot of controversial topics. Okay. I just want to preface by saying there are a lot of experts out in the world. In fact, in my industry, that's a big challenge, is that everyone and their mom is a social media expert. Okay. So I just want to preface by saying there are a lot of experts out there and different opinions. And I can just tell you only from my experience what I've done for myself. Okay. What I've done for myself and what I've helped probably a few thousand other clients and members of mine over the past, 6-7 years. But I have this belief that a lot of branding and growth in business, a lot of it is can be overthought. And so I speak with people and I notice where a lot of people's concern tends to go when they have strategy calls with me or consultation. And I notice that the biggest concerns are almost trying to control this big picture thing. Imagine saying to yourself, well, I only want these types of people to come to my speaking event. I only want these types of people to hear me because I think that those are going to be my best followers. I think that those are the people that are going to buy my products and services. I think those are the people that are going to resonate with me the most. Now, for most people who, unless you're spending $10, $20, $30,000 a day on advertisement and you are well aware of a volume of data that has like proven these things, if you're not doing that yet, I'm telling you, you are missing a huge opportunity by trying to create and control what audience is going to engage with you best. Okay. That part of that journey and that growth in that journey is, as an example, for me, I have a few rules. I will take a phone call with anyone. I will answer and schedule a 5-minute call with somebody on my team with anyone. Over 5 to 6, 7 years, you never know what one message, which at face value, you say, well, John, he doesn't seem like my type of person. He's done this, that, and the other in his life. I don't think he's going to be a client of mine. I don't think he's going to connect with me. I don't think there's any value. And so I don't want him as a follower. That's what a lot of people are kind of thinking about, because, we're trying to perfect this really, really big thing. But in my experience in business, not social media, in life and in business, is that one relationship, that 20-minute phone call, 15-minute, 5-minute call where I make a good impression on John and he talks about who he is and I tell a little bit about myself. And all of a sudden, John goes, Jeremy, I have a really great friend of mine I would love to introduce you to. And that person ends up becoming, let's say, a top paying client, who does another few million in revenue with you, partners with you, creates a collaboration. You guys, you never know where these things can go. And so in the beginning of building a journey, and honestly, forevermore, I think that, yes, you need to be really, really open and willing to let your audience find you, and do it through some hard work, like actually connecting with the people that are engaging with you. Find out, many times you will find out that the audience you think engages with you and will like you the most
Yeah.
is, let's say, the complete opposite, right? Just for sake of conversation, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, no, it's great piece of advice. And I think I'm reflecting just as we're talking now. And I think I do some business mentoring as well. I have early stage startups, etc. And through one of the mentoring sessions, end up connecting with somebody, got on really well. Nothing comes of it. And it turns out a long time down the road, and I'm actually starting a company with him in a different space than I'd ever thought I'd be involved in. And you just never know. And it's even these times where you might meet somebody, it might not reach anything on that call next month, not even necessarily next year, but you don't know where that's going to lead, whether it's years down the road or, like I say, those introductions that might be made. So yeah, no, I think that's a great piece of advice. And with so many brands out there, how can you make your brand stand out and make it memorable?
well, here's my next controversial statement. Slow and steady does not win this race. Organic and, if I just post every day for the next 10 years, I know my clients will come and find me. I know success will come and find me. Now, listen, is that possible? Absolutely. Okay. And certainly, if you have the ability to create viral content on some sort of consistent basis, absolutely. And is it a long game either way? Absolutely. But the one thing that I see hurt people the most is they spend too much time down in the middle to bottom of their value of their brand, and they're just flooded with everyone else. Okay. And so creating separation in your brand, it does take speed. It takes a little bit of aggression. And if you've ever asked yourself, for any of the listeners, let alone you, John, if you've ever asked yourself, you start seeing someone pop up and you say, where did this guy come from? It was only a month ago or a year ago. I had never even heard of him. And now he is on every podcast. He's got millions of followers. He seems to be just exponentially growing, and every piece of success, everything he touches turns to gold. If you've ever seen that happen, I believe that there's a reason for that. And so my team and I, when we talk to a new member, we create this framework, which is, if you're looking at a chart, you do not want it to grow slow and steady over many, 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 many,
Mm.
many years. The minute that you decide you want to get your name out there, the minute you decide you'd like to become a guest of a podcast and start putting out content and doing business through your social, the minute you decide that, I believe you should put all of the gasoline on the fire and have the chart grow tremendously in a short period of time. Okay. And so if you're going to do one podcast, I'd encourage you to go do 50. I'm not exaggerating. My clients, we do anywhere from 30 to 100 podcasts a year for each of them. Okay.
So yeah, that's big numbers. And like I say, it's just, that was going to be my follow-up question about how do you actually put that gas on that fire so it is really going all out and just 100% focus. What other steps can people take to go all out?
Well, they can take a few steps. Number one, create a small list of the most valuable focus points for you and your brand. And so this is a bit different for everyone. And the reason it's different is because if your ROI end result is, let's say, to raise money for your next business or to raise money for your real estate investing, okay, that end result is going to be different than someone who wants to build an online training fitness business, okay? Or somebody who purely wants to try and earn money from being a quote unquote influencer, right? Which is a content creator. So your business, and remember, if earlier we talked about, how to get started and what to focus on.
Yeah.
And you said you have a few different projects. That's why it's so important that you get your your real life cards in order. Okay. And make sure you're looking at your hand laid out and decide which business am I going to focus on, because it's going to dictate the end result that you're looking for. And a lot of people, they have this problem, they have this challenge, and they're kind of lost because they have a real life business, and then they think that the personal brand and social is different from all of that. But they are highly connected. And you really want to build kind of an ecosystem, right? Where you're in the middle, Jon is in the center, and everything that you do, whether it's social, whether it's branding, speaking events, podcasts, all of this should be very well connected to that kind of center goal. Okay. So that no matter what happens, if somebody happens to come across your speaking event, they're going to, gravity is going to pull them into, the rest of your ecosystem. If somebody comes across a podcast interview, gravity is going to pull them to the rest of your ecosystem. Okay. So again, if you look at some extremely successful people, you'll notice that what they do in different sectors or in different areas and industries, they're usually only just a few degrees to the left or the few degrees to the right. And so it continues to keep everything and everyone that comes to them, in this general ecosystem. So yeah, I hope that gives you a few thoughts to kind of chew on there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is where I've certainly struggled in the past. And it's just being too far off the line one way or another. So yeah, I think it's easy to verge off in one direction. And so that's definitely something I need to focus on. When it comes to a lot of personal branding, obviously it's now done through social media. We've spoken a little bit about that, but how do you identify where best to seek out your audience? Because there's so many different platforms now.
Yeah. Again, there are a few indicators. I think they're really obvious. YouTube is long form content, audio, podcasts, Instagram is kind of like this business card, this really, really strong business card that, a picture tells 1,000 words. Okay. That's kind of Instagram. LinkedIn, you can contact anyone from any profession, their resume. So this allows you to go towards, suit and tie businesses and conversations. And so picking and choosing based on, again, what business and what ROI focus, what end result focus would you like to get from social? And by the way, for anybody listening, ROI, I don't just mean, making money through your social media. Okay. I also mean the end goal that could be to create more impact in your industry. Okay. There are many members of mine that they've already built a successful business, and now they want to go be a speaker. Now they want to go be a mentor. Now they want to just create a brand purely to get into the conversation. Okay. And so that's an end result as well. Okay. So you might decide that, Instagram is, by the way, I do think Instagram is just an extremely well-rounded platform that allows people to kind of tap into some longer form and shorter form, and also just clearly get a little bit of a idea as to who someone is, who you are on a personal level. So, but with all this being said, whichever platform you choose, they each have their differences. Choose one of them first and go really, really deep in that platform. Okay. Because the horror story, the worst case scenario, is to try and spread yourself thin between 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms. And you haven't created any proof of concept with one of them. Right. So if your goal, Jon, is, Jeremy, I'd like to, X amount of products through my new business, or I'd like to bring on some coaching clients. Okay, great. Pick a platform, go communicate with people, book phone calls, schedule calls, create a sales process from that platform, create a process that's going to prove to you. And then the minute that you do your first 5, 10, 15, 20,000 in revenue through any given platform, that will be enough proof of concept for you to continue to go deeper and deeper on this platform. So yeah, I hope that gives some insight there.
Yeah, I think one of the things people do struggle with is paralysis by analysis. And it's all those things about where should I be posting? Should I be posting across multiple platforms? Should I do the same content across multiple platforms, or differentiate? And it can be sometimes overthinking it, like you say. But it can be, certainly if you're trying to keep up on social media and keep posting frequently. What strategies are there for trying to keep your content fresh and engaging without burning out?
Yeah. So here's my third controversial statement. I built a system so that I didn't have to be uh, a slave to the content machine. Okay. You talk to someone who is on this absurd content calendar. Okay. And you say, do you enjoy doing that? And they say, no, I absolutely hate it. In fact, I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm burnt out. I'm trying to follow the trends. I'm trying to do what I'm trying to tap into the algorithm. How often do we hear that? Okay. All of these things, at the end of the day, you cannot control half of this. So just like building a business, people don't start by asking themselves, what business do I want to build? How would I like my business to be run? If it was at a very, very high level, how would I like things to be? Okay. I would ask these same questions when it comes to any system or any strategy, whether it's Instagram or YouTube. So you say, wow, you know, that guy became so successful on YouTube. How did he do it? Well, if you ask him, I guarantee he'll say, well, I've been on YouTube for 20 years and I love making content. I love making videos. And so then you have a Mr. Beast who won't even take $1 billion for the channel. Okay. Then you have a Logan Paul. Then you have, all of these YouTubers. That is what they fell in love with. And that's what they've been doing. And they've built their ecosystem around that main thing. Okay. Someone else might have a different business. And like myself and a lot of my members, I have a lot of my members are real estate agents or, high level real estate investors or business owners. And so they've built their business and now they're building their brand to get them into the conversation, to get them invited to the podcast interviews, to get them invited to the speaking events. And so they enjoy doing that. And to your point and to your question, content strategy is about finding a marathon pace that is going to allow you to actually be here 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. Okay. So if you ask me, a lot of my members are freaked out because they say, well, how many times do I need to post this week? And I'm like, well, let's look at how much content do you have? How much do you have going on in your life? Okay. And let's associate it and let's make it work over the next 3, 6, 12 months, let alone pushing you to do some crazy 30-day sprint that you don't even know why you're doing it. And so there are a lot of people out there that are just struggling with figuring out why are they creating their brand in the first place. Okay. So you associate it with a real goal and the content will come. Okay. More is not always better, by the way. Volume doesn't always beat quality. If you go on my Instagram as an example, I might only post a few times a month, maybe. But a system where someone has built a really strong brand, they're communicating with their audience 24/7. And so as an example, I think my personal Instagram books anywhere from 30 to 60 discovery calls every week with new high-level entrepreneurs and individuals that I can connect with and do business with and build my relationships and build my life. So that's the choice I made was, you know what? I want this thing to work whether I'm there or not. I don't want it to take over my life. I'm going to run it. It's not going to run me. And so these are some decisions that a lot of people have to think about before they decide which route they want to go,
But no, that's really interesting to hear, and I think quite reassuring as well, because as you say, there's so many how to beat the algorithm advice out there and start posting 3 times a day and just putting up content, and that definitely can lead to burnout. So it's reassuring to hear that you're doing it that infrequently and still getting results from it. So in terms of say you've got your brand, you're starting to build your personal brand, it's getting some traction. What are some of the best ways that you would go about helping somebody monetize their personal brand?
Well, it comes back to the business model first. So kind of like we were just talking about, if you do not have if you don't have your business model laid out, then how can you go about, trying to monetize anything, right? So the best example of this is if somebody is creating a coaching program or has some sort of online product. That's usually the big focus that I'm helping my personally my members. I'm not so much into like the e-commerce or physical products and things like that. But as an example, imagine somebody coming into your storefront and you don't have a price on any of your items. Okay, so if you're creating an online coaching program or an online product or business and you haven't even decided kind of what's going to be offered, what's in the deal, and what does it cost? So I have a saying where I'll ask one of my members, if someone came to you right now with 5, 10, 15, $20,000 and they said, John, I want to give you 20,000 right now. Do you have something for them? Yes or no? So your question is, how does somebody go about monetizing their social media? And the big answer is monetize, make sure you have a real structure for your business and integrate it into your social. Okay. So if you haven't sold somebody in real life on a program or on a product or on anything yet, you need to make sure that you have some proof of concept and you have a product, you have a price, you have an offering. Because if somebody were to come to you right now and say, hey, John, I want to give you 20,000 for your coaching program, what do I get? The problem isn't the guy that has the money. He's ready. The challenge or problem might be most of the time in the beginning of my conversations with my clients, the problem is that they haven't thought about, am I ready when the person is actually trying to buy from me, right? They're ready to spend the money with you. And so if you ask yourself that and you don't have that laid out, chances are you're really not ready to even have a phone call or have a lead come through the system yet. So I would start backwards. Everybody's like, well, let me, build my website and get my logo created and, spend all this time on all this really, 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 very minimal, I don't want to say meaningless, but in the beginning, okay, I want to go straight to the end result. Okay. If I had my perfect product, even if I can't provide it yet, I'm still going to create the structure and outline it as if I already am at that level. And so if you start backwards and if you go to your coaching program and you say, well, I want a client that's going to spend 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, and this is what I would provide them. This is what I would like to provide them. This is what I think would be worth that value. Okay. And you detail everything and work backwards, right? And so once you have that created, then you can go into your branding and your social media, actually start communicating with people, connecting with people, maybe booking phone calls, maybe booking strategy calls, maybe offering something for free and getting on a phone call with them. And when that time comes where they say, so John, I really like you. What do you have to offer? What do you do? What could I do with you? What could I buy from you? And then you actually have something ready to go and you can kind of work from there.
I don't know, one of the things that I'm certainly interested in, I know you've worked with some amazing clients yourself, and it is those amazing clients who might be spending $20,000 and say they've got that much to spend. So I know you've worked with Netflix stars or entrepreneurs and all sorts of people. So how do you build those connections? Is that something that you've slowly worked up to? What was your strategy?
Yeah, I think it's something that I slowly worked up to, but connecting the dots backwards now, I don't think I would have had to work as slowly in order to reach that level. So I talked a little bit earlier about when it's time to grow your brand, put the gasoline on the fire and don't go slow and steady over many, many years. Okay. You want to really, really grow your name and your reputation. Okay. And your kind of social cred as quickly as possible. And you know what? It could only take one really incredible podcast interview, by the way. It could only take one really incredible client that you find your way to that relationship that creates an entirely new perspective on who you are and what you provide. And so I don't think it has to take a long time. And maybe I'm not even giving myself enough credit because in my early 20s in a previous business partnership, this is a perfect example. We were nobodies. Okay.
Mm.
I mean, we were just some young guys that were really, really out for success and wanted to build these relationships, wanted to get into the door, wanted to get our feet, our foot in the door. And so in our early 20s, we started building relationships, around people like Grant Cardone and this entire network down in South Florida. We started showing up to their events. We started shaking their hands. We started speaking with them, showing them that we were there. We wanted to build something. Any chance we could get, right, to ask them a question, to learn something, to be involved. And we were building our brands and our personal brands at the same time. And so, yes, not long after, it led us to not only having some of these individuals as clients, okay, but, people like Ryan Secco, I remember coming to, mastermind events, just out of the kindness of wanting to be there and be a part of that network. And so it's that reminder that you're not as far away from some of those really special relationships as you think. You first just have to make sure you kind of have your shit together and look in the mirror and say, hey, I deserve this. I can build these relationships with these people and really back it up. Right. So I'm proud to say that, 5, 6, 7 years later, I have some incredible clients that operate at extremely high levels, and they could call me and I could call them at any given time and we would still catch up, just as we have, strategized together over many, many, many years. Okay. So it doesn't have to take forever. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to take forever. You can certainly step into the light and build a really big name for yourself very quickly, and watch how that kind of changes the way people view you. I had one of my members within 3 months in South Florida went from not knowing anyone in the area. He was a real estate investor, real estate agent. Within 3 months, we were sending DMs to people like Elena Cardone, other high-level entrepreneurs. Elena actually answered his message, gave her phone number to him. They met, they did a video content session. All of a sudden, his brand now had Elena Cardone on his Instagram. Okay. Right from there, he was invited to speak in front of Grant's entire licensee program, all of his licensee members. He started getting invited on tremendous podcasts and speaking events, started his own podcast and went absolutely viral. All of this happened within about 8 months. Started his own online coaching program for real estate agents. He did about $40,000 in revenue the first month of launching it. Right. So all of this is like a domino effect, but you have to lean in when it's happening. You have to lean in. If you're going to do one interview, do 50. If you're going to meet one great person, meet 100 of them.
I think there's two takeaways as well that I get from what you've just been talking about. One is to actually back yourself, and it's reaching out to those people when a lot of the times I think people hold themselves back and think they wouldn't connect with me, they're not going to be interested. And it's just having that confidence to reach out and go for it. And the other one that I picked up on is just actually building those genuine relationships, not going in for sales. I'm sure you get it as frequently as I do, but the amount of messages I get, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere, which is just an outright sales pitch. So I think that authenticity of relationships is definitely coming through. For someone who is facing slow growth or feeling frustrated, what advice can you give to keep people on track and to keep persevering even when things are difficult?
Well, that's a great question. When you give up is when it's really done, right? So, I learned through music that I'm going to spend 5, 10, 15 years. So one day, good or bad, never made a difference. That led into business. I heard this saying once is one bad thing will never change the real outcome. One bad interaction with somebody is what will never ruin a relationship. And so, when you're on this journey, of course, there are going to be ups and downs, especially when you're focusing on the wrong outcomes. Okay. So since we're talking about branding and social media, let me make it very clear what a few of the wrong outcomes to be worried about are. How many views did I get on my last video compared to my other videos? How many people listen to this podcast versus the other episodes I've done? How many likes did I get on this photo? How many people shared that photo? How many people are viewing my story at this very moment on my Instagram story? All of these things are very, um, in regards to impact in your life and in your business. And it's really, really scary how many people get caught up in worrying. And I mean worrying, okay?
Mm.
Worrying what other people think, worrying that it's not the right number. Okay. How many times I have this strategy called, Jeremy, the engagement is kind of this, and before it was sort of this. And so I feel like what's going on and what's happening. And it's like, well, first off, you can't control all of these things. So, and second, if I were to ask you what is the most important end result you're looking for, these things would not be and should not be
Mm.
on the top 3, 5 list. So a reminder, if you haven't already, is to make that list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. What are you actually looking for? People are worried about how many views or likes. And I'm like, well, how many people did you speak with from your social?
Mm.
How many new connections, how many new phone numbers, how many new actual messages, names, contacts, people are in your phone because of the social, right? Because of the Instagram, because of the LinkedIn, right? So shifting back to what truly matters, why you're there, is the biggest fuel when things are quote unquote not
Mm.
going right. And I've been in the scenario where one day I'm thinking, wow, there's not much happening today. And then the next day you have 20 responses and you have 5 people that scheduled calls, and 3 of those individuals become extremely valuable connections or possibly clients or possibly partnerships or a mentor, right? Or somebody answers. So all of this stuff happens, but yeah, I mean, just, you can't give up. You've got to keep rocking and rolling, and you really have to, put in perspective what are the most important actions and steps to take, and just make sure that, you're focused on doing that.
I think it's related to what we've just been speaking about, but one of the challenges I'd imagine is identifying when you just need to persevere and things might take off and just keep doing what you're doing, or identifying actually it's just not hitting, the branding's off, things need to be changed up. So at what point do you realize the branding's not on point, it needs changing?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and a really great point to bring up. And I think that you have to get real world feedback. Okay, so it's correlated to this end result. So as an example, for anyone who's out there and who is trying to get a client in some sort of coaching business, or a client in your real estate business, any professional front facing industry, okay, anything that involves you representing yourself as the professional and going and getting a client. Okay. So I know there are a lot of examples here, but anything in that scenario, if you go and connect with somebody in real life or from social, and you reference your social media, pay attention to how they feel about it. Pay attention to anything that they say about it. The indicators are from those individuals that are your potential clients, partners, new friends. I wouldn't worry too much about what your old friends and family necessarily
Mm.
had to say about who you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because creating this new image, it's not going to make any sense to all of those others. But for the people that I'm meeting today, those individuals come onto my phone calls personally and with my members, and they say, wow, this guy got on the phone call with me and said, holy smokes, John,
Mm.
I took this call because I saw you had um, a really big following on social media. I saw you had a podcast, and I also saw that, you're a family man, right? Like, let's just say, I saw that you had kids. I saw that you like to golf. Those are things that are going to be key indicators for anyone that they want to connect with you, right? And build a relationship. And so I would say get real world feedback, right?
Mm.
So I'm always looking at the individuals who are going to buy from me, partner with me, do business with me, that I could add value to, and I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm not listening so much to anybody that is not doing business with me, okay? Because you're going to get a lot of that, right? the same thing as somebody telling you that what you're doing is silly or stupid or it's not worth
Yep.
it or you're going to waste your time. I mean, you're going to hear that in life in general. So I would focus on the people that say, hey, Jon, your podcast really made a difference for me today. It really set me in a new direction. I really love that interview that you had with so-and-so. Okay, that's going to drive you to do the podcast more than paying attention to somebody who's not really your end user.
And I think that's a great piece of advice. I think that's something that's overlooked a lot. We do look for validation and feedback from your social media, but you don't often discuss that with people in real life and try and seek that feedback. So yeah, I think that's a great step. Having worked with so many people who are looking to build personal brands, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see cropping up and again and again?
The first and most common challenge is what do I do with my content? What do I do with my content? Okay. And it's this Mount Everest of a challenge because when you look at so many others, they're on these crazy strategies. They're on these what seem like the endless content train, and they're honestly just intimidated from right? From the very start, intimidated that they're going to have to post 24/7, that this is going to have to become some humongous major part of their life, and they're going to have to, stop paying attention to their children so that they can make this happen. I mean, this is what it feels like, for the father, the mother, the young man, woman that are trying to build their business, let alone, start on quote unquote social media and building this brand. So my biggest piece of advice for that challenge is to first off, let go of all of these like preconceived notions as to what you have to do or what you're supposed to do. Get rid of all of that, because I promise you, the person that's posting 20 for 30 times a month, they are just as lost as you are in this process. They're just as lost. They have no idea what they're doing. They are doing it because someone else told them to half the time. Okay. Now, you'll find somebody who is calm and collect and has gone through this process, and they'll tell you that you should test things. You should continue to be creative. And what I believe is you should do what you enjoy doing, or else you will not be doing it for very long. So we kind of talked about that earlier. Wow, the YouTuber that's extremely successful, that's because they've been doing it and they love it. And they've been doing it for a very long time, right? And so that is the biggest challenge that most of my members come to me with. It is really that is the content. What is my brand? Who am I? How do I show myself, share? And it really comes down to number one, letting go, okay, of all these other preconceived notions. And number two, starting to kind of gather some really clear, basic photos and videos and content of maybe your personal life, your professional life, and some hobbies and lifestyle, right? And just take a look at your profile. Take a look at some of your stuff, whether it's YouTube, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram. Just take a look at it for a second, and does it clearly show, who you are? Can you just clearly see yourself in some of the videos and photos, right? Because this is the picture says 1,000 words. This is simply for people to get an idea of who you are and what you do.
But I think it's been great to be able to ask all these questions. It's certainly a lot of the questions I've needed answering myself. Just a couple of questions as we're getting towards the end. I'd love to ask a bit about mindset and where you get some of your mindset from and influences that have impacted on yourself. So the first question I'd like to ask about, is there one particular book that's had a biggest influence on your career and on your mindset? Can you think of one? I say book, it could be a podcast, could be a particular person.
Yeah, there were a few really, really powerful voices in my from 19, 20, 21, my early 20s that made a big impact. And those individuals are Jim Rohn, Bob Proctor. Gary Vaynerchuk was certainly an inspiration. Grant Cardone has definitely been someone that I have learned a lot of sales and communication skills from over many years. And I also think his personal brand has been an example of watching it grow from, a business owner to becoming this massive real estate investor and really connecting the business and what he was doing on social media. And so I kind of firsthand got to watch this guy go from, starting his real estate investing thing to actually raising millions and millions and millions of dollars on Instagram, right? Something that before people thought would be absolutely crazy. And because of that, now I have had members of mine, we've helped them grow their brand and go raise millions of dollars for their real estate fund, as an example, through Instagram, right? So there are some big names and voices over the years, Bob Proctor, Jim Rohn, and I think these individuals create just a really special foundation that is kind of a mix of everything from learning about the law of attraction to why you would want to become successful for the person that it will create you, not for what you will get, but for the person you will become, right? And then people, like I said, Gary Vaynerchuk, because this individual is unfiltered. He's just out here testing. He's not worried. He doesn't care what you think. He's not worried about his, what he says, how he says it. He is truly speaking from the heart. And that's a very difficult thing to do nowadays.
Yeah,
and
I was thinking exactly the same when you're saying about Gary Vaynerchuk. A great example of social media profile and just meteoric rise that he's had. And like I say, it's being authentic to who he is and just the power that's had for him. So yeah, no, that's a great example. In terms of your daily mindset and habits, is there any particular habits that you have that get you set up for the day?
Well, there's one thing that always brings joy and creativity and inspiration, and it is actually just speaking with new people or speaking with a current member of mine, speaking with a client, speaking with a potential client, speaking with a partner, speaking with a friend who is, collaborating or working on a similar project. For me, this is where I give and get impact. Okay. So, I kind of think of it as my board of directors for my personal life. So you might have individuals that each kind of represent something special. Maybe one person is the, personal branding, social media individual that you can call to just, all you need to hear is, hey, Jon, say what you really mean and, go after it and stop overthinking it. That's somebody that we need in our lives. Another might be a more spiritual individual who, can help you kind of guide you through some problems or challenges or relationship challenges. Then you have somebody else who is an expert on scaling and growing business, and they're going to tell you some really, really tough, harsh truth about what you do not have set up properly in your life or in your business. So yeah, there are definitely different areas, but one of my daily goals is to make sure that I'm communicating, connecting, always. Success is not just like all in one day. It is every single day a little bit, 1% more, 1% better. That's all it is. Okay. And so on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, it is like, I'm just looking to continue to think and progress, put some ideas down, have some new input, give some output. Okay. Coaching and helping is just as helpful. It might be frowned upon in terms of like building a business around not knowing something, but coaching and helping and guiding somebody else through an idea, whether that's your employee, your partner, or a friend, that is just as helpful for you as it is for that person. Yeah. So when my mentors come and help me, I have some close friends that have some incredible businesses and they do an absorbent amount of revenue, and they've done some incredible things that I look up to them for those reasons. And we'll have conversations and they'll help me solve problems. It's just as beneficial for them to think through for their own problem, their own challenge for today, and vice versa. So
yeah, no, you definitely learn so much from those conversations. As a mentor, you get just as much from it as a mentee. So yeah, I think that's great to keep up those relationships. I think my final question really around branding that I'd love to ask is, what's the biggest lesson that you wish you'd learned about branding sooner?
The biggest lesson I wish I had learned sooner is actually something you kind of mentioned earlier, and it struck a chord with me while we were on this interview when you asked me, did it take a long time to build some of these higher level relationships? Okay. That is a perfect example that I'm talking to myself as you were asking me that question. I'm saying to myself, Jeremy, it didn't have to take as long for some of these things, these changes that I've made in my business recently over the past, year. I could have made those decisions earlier. I should have made those decisions earlier. I can't change. I can only put the dots together after the fact. But absolutely, I think that you do not have to wait. You should not wait to make some really big changes in your business. Okay. Test new things. Do not be afraid to test new ideas. That could be new content and a new style and a new bio and a new picture and a new you. Okay. A new image, even though it might disrupt some of the people that are so used to seeing you a certain way. Okay. Create a new image and try it, test it and work it. Okay. The same way that you would want to create a new business model, do not be afraid to change the business model. And I think the hardest thing to realize is that the person you want to become your client, okay, the person you want to do a deal with at that higher level, they don't know the past. They don't know the old business model and the old Jeremy and the old Jon. So you need to show up ready to meet that person. And you can do it you can really do it when you are ready. Right. And so, yes, do you have to have a foundation? Absolutely. Do you have to be able to back it up when that person says, let's do it? Yes, absolutely. And that does take time. Okay. That does take time. I couldn't just approach one of my high level members with the same knowledge and service that I had 5 years ago. You understand? So those things, in that sense, yes, it was going to take the amount of time that it needed in order for those things to come into play. But you certainly can listen to me telling you now that maybe there's a big change or a shift that you should be making. And you don't need to wait another month. You don't need to wait another 3 months to make that big shift, because it'll make a difference.
I think that's a fantastic place to end, to go out there and take that action. And if anyone wants to reach out to you or get in touch with you about coaching, where's the best places to find out more?
Yeah. Well, my Instagram, we're always there. My team is taking care of that and handling that. And so at Jeremy Bishop, I think it's BISH0P, maybe with an underscore there. So basically just my name there. Our company is influencerclubmedia.com. And if you'd like to schedule a strategy call, our team is available always to help kind of talk through where you are currently. You may or may not be at the point where you're ready to, do something like what we provide, but we certainly have, tools, resources, platform that our team is more than happy to give you, because really there is no special secret. It's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of, really diligent day-to-day tasks that create great systems on social. But I want you to have them. I want you to know that if you go send messages to people, they will respond and you will build amazing relationships, and that can be just the start of a business through social media for you, just as simple as that. So get in touch with our team. We're happy to have a strategy call and hopefully build a relationship with you. And, Jon, thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate the questions. You really give me something to think about today, and kind of,
been amazing. I really appreciate you coming on. And I'll put all your links in the description as well. So if anyone wants to find you, look in the description and check Jeremy out. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thanks.